In this episode, we are tackling a big issue for artists, imposter syndrome. Find out why it's an issue and how to tackle it. So, what would you say imposter syndrome is? Because I don't know how long that term's been about, but it definitely wasn't about when we were children, I don't think.
No, it's quite a hot topic as well, isn't it? Something people speak about a lot. I think you could sum it up as like a feeling of inadequacy, or like you're not good enough, or you don't belong in a certain space.
Don't belong in a certain space is a really good way of... I've tried to think of a really good example. Yeah, you've gone into a new job, but you don't feel you really should be there. I think that's the same for lots and lots of people. And then, obviously, some people would go in and go, well, I'm new. But some people would just go, what am I doing here? I think that's imposter syndrome. Yeah.
I do think it's particularly common amongst artists, and we'll get into this. But I think there's a lot of things for artists that are like... There's a lot of perceptions around what it is to be an artist and be in the art world. And it's actually quite different from what it feels like from being an actual artist.
Absolutely, yeah. I find it that people put artists on pedestals sometimes. Yeah. And I think because of that, that's not how you feel at all as an artist. So it's almost a mismatch, isn't it?
It is, because what you want to do is just kind of express yourself and be the most genuine version of yourself and say something about the world.
And connect to people. And so you don't really want to be on a pedestal, because that doesn't make sense with what you're actually trying to achieve. But other than that, you get people who feel like imposters because they haven't had an official art degree or education. Or sometimes what happens is a bit like what's happened to me, where you almost become an artist by default. And I don't know whether there must be lots of people who come to art from completely different directions. And so that's quite a strange one as well, because you're like, oh, have I got here? It's like, why have I got a studio? And it almost sort of happens to you sometimes. But I think that's how it feels if it's naturally happening as well. But obviously, that leads you to that feeling of, what am I doing here? I don't even understand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and where do you think you are now on your imposter syndrome scale? Because I think that's the other thing with art, is that as artists as well, you're always kind of pushing your own limits in a way, aren't you? So it's very common, because it's like you're doing something different as well.
Always, almost. Because once you've cracked one thing, you're moving on to the next thing, because I think artists are eternally curious about the next stage. I think that's part of being an artist. I don't know, because I think with the things that you feel comfortable with, you lose that imposter syndrome, don't you? Yeah. So if I was to run a workshop, or I actually know what I'm quite good at, if that makes sense, but we're shortly going to be going into a gallery for a couple of weeks, and no, I don't know whether I do feel imposter syndrome about that. I probably don't, actually. No, I don't, because I've got so much art. It's just like, it's probably more the new stuff that I'm feeling, rather than exhibiting old stuff or
creating the new artwork.
Yeah. That's probably where I feel it, because although I can talk about it, sometimes that verbalising it is difficult. And at that point, you think, can I really do this? What am I doing?
Yeah, and you're still going through the stages as well of figuring out exactly how to express what you want to express with your art. So I think that's normal. And quite often, I think when you're doing your art, it's not until a couple of months later that you can look back and tie up the dots as well and say, oh, that's why I did it that way.
Yeah.
Because it's the process of making is you're tapping into your intuition, so you can't always 100% articulate why you're doing what you're doing, because it's a process of making.
And sometimes, and I always go back to the writing because I find it easier to articulate that, but I used to have an idea for a poem, for example. I think it's easier with the writing because the same process happens within a short period of time. So if I'm thinking of a poem, it would happen in miniature, whereas a lot of the process with art is like more a bigger, longer period of time. That probably sounds weird. So my example is, I'm thinking about my poem and I've got an idea. I can feel the idea. It's in here. I can feel it. And I start to like notice things, and it sort of just percolates and percolates and percolates. And then sometimes I even like would wake up in the night and go, and it would still percolate. And then all of a sudden, everything comes out like bam onto a paper, right? And then you have to put it together. But, essentially, that's intuitive thinking in just like in short, if that makes sense, because I suppose it's a poem, as opposed to like a series, in which case you're starting to work on. I might be thinking about colour at some point. I might be thinking about what's going on with the seasons or whatever. So there's quite a lot. It's like almost a bigger picture of that then comes together. That is, and at that point, you can't articulate it. I'm starting to now. I noticed that when you exhibit, I don't know if you get this, I did have a little pop-up last weekend, and I was talking to people about some of the pieces, and what I noticed was that all of a sudden it clicked even more what those pieces were about. And this is in like retrospect, and that's strange. I'm like, yeah, all of these pieces are about where the land meets the sea. And I just said it. And I'm just like, or where the land meets water. That's what all of these pieces are about. It's my flowing essence collection. Sometimes they're rivers as well, but where they meet, that's what it's about. And I'm like, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah,
Isn't that strange?
I've experienced that as well quite a lot. It's only until you kind of put it together, put it on show and start speaking to people about it that it kind of clicks. And I think that's what I was saying about creating an art collection. When you're in the middle of it, it's quite hard to see exactly what it is and what you're doing. It's quite common to feel imposter syndrome, particularly if you're pushing your art in different directions. And then a few months later, I think it then tends to kind of click.
It's after the paintings are finished.
Yeah.
After you've titled them, after you've thought about each of one of them individually, it's the whole. It was the whole picture in a sentence. That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's almost like you always knew what you were doing all along.
Yeah.
It's just hard sometimes to put it into words.
Yeah. Well, you do know what you're doing because you feel it, and it's like really. It's like here, isn't it? You know. It's just getting it out.
Yeah.
And at first it's getting it out onto the painting, and then it's getting it out into the words of what you're doing. Yeah.
And quite often talking it through with people helps as well, because if you're just in your studio working on something, it helps, doesn't it, to have that back and forth chat with people. I think what's kind of ironic about imposter syndrome, I think the majority of us suffer from imposter syndrome in some shape or form. And it's easy to convince yourself that other people just know what they're doing and they're really confident. Actually, I think most people go through it, don't they? Particularly as artists.
It's not just art, obviously, is it? I remember bringing my son home and thinking, gosh, I've got this responsibility after this child. I don't know what to do. Where are the cotton wool buds? Where's the cotton wool? Where's the nappies? Where is everything? And it's like, once you're a mum, you are a mum.
Yeah.
Full stop. I do remember that feeling of coming home, and I'd been in hospital for 3 days actually, which is quite a long time nowadays, isn't it? And I think that was part of it, because there was somebody there helping, and then all of a sudden you're like,
I've got to figure this out on my own.
Yeah, and it's definitely like that being an artist sometimes, because you do have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much education or support even you've got, you've still got to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, definitely. It's very personal, isn't it? So, like, I think imposter syndrome can come up too when you're just feeling a bit vulnerable about general things. But I also think there's nothing wrong in expressing a bit of that vulnerability, because that's also how we connect to people, isn't it? And quite often you'll find if you're in social situation or a work situation and you actually open up about feeling, oh, I'm feeling a little bit a lack of confidence here or something, someone else that you thought was maybe full of confidence is like, oh, I'm so glad you said that, and then you start talking about it, don't you?
Yeah.
And it becomes
That's what they
easier.
say in classrooms, isn't it? Do ask, because somebody else will be thinking it.
Yeah, you just don't want to be the first one to ask, do you?
No, you definitely don't. No. Yeah. I was thinking about you as well, because you've actually left work to do this. That is major, major stuff. Yeah. You must have felt confident enough as an artist to do that.
Yeah, I did. I think it, but also, to be honest, it was more a fear of not trying what I wanted to do and having regrets.
Yes.
Of having the confidence, maybe. It's like, what's worse, not trying something and failing versus never giving something a go and living with regrets.
I think I've sort of felt like that as well. But, well, I know I have, because sometimes I've thought, because George is at an age of retiring, and really I've had a lot of ill health, and I could have just gone, I don't need to do this. But I felt like, you know, when you're in your rocking chair and you're looking back, you don't want to go, oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd had a go. Yeah. So I do get it. I get why you've done it. I do. I still think it's quite brave, if I'm honest.
I think art just gives me so much as well in terms of well-being and being able to express myself and those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
People did say to me at the time I was really brave, but then also what struck me was a lot of people said to me they'd like to do something for themselves, but they've got no idea at all
what they want to
do. And that really shocked me, because I thought, actually, I'm really, really lucky that I've got something that I'm super passionate about, and I know what I want to do, because a lot of people don't even get to that stage, do they? And that's quite sad to me.
No, my problem is the opposite. I have so many things I want to do, really.
I've got too much on my to-do list.
Yeah, and I've seen that in people before, particularly when they're like, I'm bored and I just like, I don't really know, and I'm getting a bit fed up, and you're just like, well, just do something then. Yeah. Do something. Doesn't really matter what, just do something. And then you'll trigger another idea, and then, but maybe that's something we've been blessed with.
I think it is a blessing and a curse, because it's like creating your art is something that you're always going to have and you're always going to be interested in, which is fantastic, because you're going to have something to keep you going even when you're, you know, in your old age. I don't think artists ever really retire, do they?
I don't think so. Or you certainly don't have to stop painting when you're older, because it's actually quite, it can be quite gentle. You don't have to do it in a,
and there's all
a
sorts of
huge
ways
canvas type way.
Yeah. But I think the flip side of that is that we do get very grouchy and upset if we don't get our creative time, don't we?
Yeah, we have talked about that before. Yeah.
And I went through a phase of not doing anything at all, and it just made me really miserable. So I won't be trying that again.
And even though you've left work and have got absolutely no money, you are still feeling quite happy.
I'm still here. I'm still feeling, and you know, I was just thinking last night as well, which was Sunday night, how I used to feel on Sunday night, thinking that I'd go into my kind of corporate job. You know, you get the Sunday blues, but I was revved up. We had a good chat Sunday night and talking about all our plans and everything. So it's totally different. And you can't buy that with money, because I was on good salary. And, certain
Yeah,
people
so you could go on holidays or you could do whatever you wanted to do in theory.
Me and my ex-partner, we paid off the mortgage fairly quickly for our age because we were both earning a decent amount of money and all that kind of stuff. But what you realise is that kind of stuff, it gets you so far in terms of being happy, in terms of stability, but actually to be really yourself and really happy is, I've got to be an artist. I've got to make it work. And I'm just like, I've got to make it work now. Putting ridiculous amounts of pressure on myself. Yeah.
No pressure.
I know.
Yes. No pressure on me either, Ruth.
No, I'm trying not to send it your way.
So let's break down this. I think break down imposter syndrome in art, because I think I would like to break it down into when you first start.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of the talent thing is a little bit imposter syndrome-y, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when people say they haven't got talent, they feel like, how can I do it?
Yeah. Why am I not producing masterpieces the first time I pick up a paintbrush?
Yeah, weird that, isn't it?
It's weird when you think about it.
Yeah. So we talk about how difficult it is at our stages and how sometimes you'll get the glimpses of where you really want to be. And then you've got people at the very beginning thinking, well, I'll never be able to paint like so-and-so because their first painting hasn't really turned out that good. But what I do notice is if they do a couple of paintings, I think they start to compare themselves to themselves then.
Yeah, instead of looking for outside comparison, which
I
never
think
really works. Yeah.
Because I think maybe at the beginning you've got nothing else to compare yourself to because you haven't done anything yet.
You don't know what you're good at, what you're not good at yet.
No, and I think when you start and you start having a go, you realise that quite quickly you improve. You do really quickly, actually.
Yeah, and also
at the beginning,
I think people are quite quick to interpret things in their own way as well. So when you're teaching workshops or whatever, you'll find you can give people the same directions, but they'll do things in their own way. And I think people are always surprised to find that actually they have got their own kind of natural
uniqueness,
preferences.
Their own,
yeah. And that's quite apparent early on as well for people. So it's like what we've said before with art, though, it's the process of the actual making of the art and the doing of the art, not thinking about what you're going to do, but just get going, I think is quite different for people, can be a challenge.
I'm trying to think how that's different to later on imposter syndrome. I wonder whether at the beginning you get less imposter syndrome, really. Once you've got over the starting, then you're just learning, aren't you then? And you probably haven't got that imposter syndrome in the same way as we're perhaps referring to it now. Would you?
Yeah, probably.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I do, because you're just kind of, if you're learning techniques or you're going to classes and things like that, that's quite an enjoyable stage, and you're probably surrounded by people that are at the same level as you, so you don't feel like you're in the wrong place. But then when you start to branch out and define your own unique voice, you're taking up a different space, aren't you?
Yeah, because at the beginning you're basically saying, I'm learning to be an artist. You're not necessarily calling yourself an artist. And I think it's that at that point that you start to feel like, am I an artist? Am I not an artist? And it's those at that point that the imposter syndrome probably kicks in. And then at the point where you're going to a gallery, and then at the point whenever you've got those points where you're taking that next step.
Yeah. It's like a new milestone, isn't it, to get over? And I think it's like anything else. The more you do something, the easier it becomes. But as you progress in your art career, generally speaking, you're going to be approaching more prominent galleries. So it's like, even though you've been to galleries before and been in them, it might be that this one is a bit more...
Do I fit? Do I fit here?
Do I fit in here? Do I
I
belong
do
here?
think that the imposter syndrome a little bit is, do I fit? Do I belong?
Yeah.
Yeah, we said that at the beginning, didn't we? And that resonated with me because I think that's definitely how I feel. And I think even, and I only want to touch on this, but even with the teaching as well, as you know, because we've taken a big step with starting the Art Hub, and we've got another big thing going on next year, which people don't know about yet. But the point is that you really start to question whether you have got the ability to carry everything through. But on the other hand, you think, when you look back, you think, actually, I've had quite a lot of experience now and I've done quite a lot. And so you can see how you've got to the point you're at.
Yeah.
But I think that takes thinking about, rather than just... Imposter syndrome quite often is a gut reaction, isn't it? Perhaps almost an anxiety, really, about whether you...
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
It's interesting because I don't think I've tried to break it down at all before now. I think the way that imposter syndrome comes out in me is probably just like I'm sort of standing somewhere and going, oh, come on, I'm just like, oh, this is really weird. I'm just here and I'm not really, you know, or somebody is in the workshop and they've travelled or something like that, and you're just like, they've travelled to see me. Or it's somebody's birthday, they've come and had a workshop in, and somebody's bought them it as a treat for their birthday.
It's a special treat, yeah.
I don't necessarily feel imposter syndrome then, but I do feel really touched, to be honest.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome then, how...
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. Stop. It's because Ruth and I were just talking off camera, and we were like, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? And this is my face.
Like a deer in headlights, for those who can't say.
Oh, yes, I have no idea.
It does
so
feel
Ruth's going to help.
It does feel like that at times, though, doesn't it? You can feel like totally out of your comfort zone. I think a big thing is knowing that you're going to be scared and carrying on anyway. I mean, we did a whole episode on confidence, didn't we? So if you feel like you're really struggling with it, have a listen back to that, because we kind of deep dive into how to become more confident, really, don't we? And it goes in cycles as well.
And we also did the call yourself an artist. Do you call yourself an artist? And
yeah.
Really, that whole thing is also the same sort of thing. You know, when do you feel confident enough to call yourself an artist?
Yeah.
But I think that the feeling like an imposter, but carrying on anyway, that's what you'd do if you had a new job, isn't it?
Yes,
that is what you do.
Yeah.
So somebody once said to me when I was very, very young, I used to blush.
Oh.
And
yeah,
I know, when I was a teenager. Yeah. People said, somebody said to me, you know, if you just pretend you're not embarrassed and just carry on anyway, you will be fine. Just
really
carry.
Good tip. Yeah,
it is a really good tip, because I used to just carry on, and then you stop blushing actually after a while.
You sort of trick yourself, don't you, into believing that you're confident, and if you do something enough, it's a bit like you can do power poses as well.
Power poses, oh, right? Yeah. Okay.
So I went on a programme with the Scottish Parliament. It was called Women in Leadership, and there was a group of women.
Yeah.
And we went through everything from like mindset to like specific challenges of being a woman. And they gave us a lot of tools actually to kind of build confidence and resilience in us. And one of them was power poses. So if you kind of imagine, you know, spreading your arms or having your arms up high, something like that makes you physically feel like you're taking up space, you're stretching yourself. So the whole body language, particularly if you're physically in a space and you feel like that you've got a bit of imposter syndrome, just checking your body language can have a big impact on actually how you feel and how confident you actually feel. Whereas if you're kind of, curled up and making yourself small, you're going to feel small.
Yeah.
But again, you're kind of tricking yourself into thinking, I'm feeling confident in myself. And that does help kind of project more confidence and kind of trick yourself into feeling more confident as well.
Put your lippy on.
Yeah.
It does
Put
make a
your
difference,
lippy on,
doesn't it? Yeah.
Put some good music on before you go out to get you into a good mood. And, there's all sorts of things you can do, isn't there, to kind of get yourself in the right headspace. Yeah.
Works for men too. You have to try it.
Yeah. Haircut and
Yeah,
shave or whatever, and
I do think sometimes that being able to put your face on is an advantage for women.
Help. Yeah, I always think that. Yeah, or being able to put a nice dress on. Yeah.
And sometimes when I'm feeling at my worst because I've been tired or something like that, then you can put your face on and people go, "Oh, you look really good," and you're like, "Yeah, I've just put some makeup on, really." But that's really, it is a bit of a power, isn't it? I never really thought. Yeah.
I think the other thing that you can think about as well is reframing the meaning of imposter syndrome a little bit. So instead of saying, "Oh, I've got imposter syndrome, I feel scared, I'm not meant to be here, I'm not ready," you can actually turn that into a positive thing and be like, "I've got imposter syndrome, that means I'm actually pushing my own boundaries, I'm taking up more space, I'm making progression. This is a natural, I'm bound to feel like this because I'm doing something new outside my comfort zone, but actually I'm being brave here and it's going to pay off."
And that's quite an exciting place to be, actually. And sometimes you can have that sort of feeling of trepidation and not feeling like you're quite in your own skin at the same time as being quite excited. You can almost have both, can't you?
You can.
In fact, I wouldn't say that imposter syndrome, although I did mention anxiety earlier, I don't think imposter syndrome means that you aren't excited to be there. It's definitely it's almost like you're in awe that you're in yeah
because actually physiologically the feelings that you get when you're anxious and the feelings that you get when you're excited are the same thing. So like you get a bit of a raised heartbeat, you might feel like you've got sweaty palms, but actually it's what's going on up here as to how you interpret it. So you can tell yourself, "I'm really excited. I'm feeling energised," and so
sometimes just noting it as well can make a difference. So just literally noting that you feel like that, and like as you said, reframing. Whether you even need to reframe, once you've just noted that's how you're feeling. But usually it is because you're in a more forward space, you're moving forward. That's why you're feeling it. So that's a really good thing when you think of it like that. Really good. Yeah, I like that. I like all of that, really. And I'm going to practice the power poses as well.
I'll send you some pictures to do. I used to do it when I was at work, in the toilet sometimes. If I was going into a difficult meeting, I'd be like, right, I'm going to,
do your power poses.
Yeah, and just physically, get in the mode for it. Especially if I was speaking to, a particular demographic. Let's not go into that, but, I thought I was going to have to be
a
bit more assertive.
Yes.
And, it's helpful.
That's good. I think we've covered quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, haven't we?
And when we first started, I really wasn't sure.
I know.
Yeah. Which is because I probably had a bit of imposter syndrome as to how to tell people about.
We're going through it at the moment because we're pushing new boundaries, aren't we, with what we're doing in Art Hub and going into a slightly different arena than we're both used to, I suppose.
And much more online. I mean, to be honest, even this podcast, it's amazing because it feels much more natural now. We're on to, oh, goodness knows, we're getting up to episode 20 now. We've definitely recorded over 20 now. Yeah. So that makes it much more natural. And I have noticed when we're editing, there's not the ums and ahs that there were.
Yeah,
there was a lot at the beginning.
Now
we just talk to each other.
Some of the early ones now. I think I'd cringe. But that's what you know. It's like with everything with a podcast. You just have to carry on until you get better and
exactly
just stop thinking about things as much, and it's more natural.
What I really like is Matt Hughes. What is it? King of YouTube or whatever it is. I can't remember his exact title. But I've been doing some YouTube stuff with him, and he said for each video, just try and get 1% better. Don't try and do it all at once, because he said the same thing happens with creators when they're doing YouTube videos as happens with artists when they first start, is they think that in order to start, the first video has to be as good as what they're going to be on the 100th. And obviously it isn't, because there's so much to think about. Things like you can start off with your mobile phone, which has got very good camera. In fact, it's got a better camera than the ones that we're using, to be fair. And we're improving things slowly, but you can't do it all at once because there's too much to learn.
It's impossible, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's quite interesting when you sort of reframe in as much as you look at what something, a different, often creative type thing is, like looking at poetry or it helps you to look at your art then and see that actually how could you possibly know everything on the first painting, or how could you possibly, you've got to take things in steps. You can't go to the top gallery with your first painting. It's not going to work like that. And I think also it's taking the smaller steps means you have little imposter syndrome instead of huge imposter syndrome as well. So it's a little
kind
bit.
of work your way up to it.
Yeah, and then you feel comfortable with it again, and then it's the next step.
And then it's the next challenge.
Which
we've had a lot of this year, haven't we?
We've had a lot of challenges.
We've got over one challenge, it's like, oh, here we go, something new again.
It definitely helps to be doing it together, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think, doing it on your own and that's not just, you can be doing it on your own, but having some sort of support network around you does help. So I've definitely joined a lot more groups than I used to, online groups, because I'm doing more of an online thing. So, yeah. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah?
You enjoyed it. And anything else that you want to add? Because
I don't think so. I think it's quite nice to have a shorter episode as well, isn't it? And we've gone through some tips, so that's good.
So I hope you've enjoyed.
Yeah,
do comment.
Let us know what you think in the comments. We always love your feedback.
Yeah, and I'm going to say like and subscribe, because we don't say it very much.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, but by liking and subscribing, you really help us, and subscriptions are completely free, so it would help us. And if you want to catch us again, it actually helps you as well, because it'll let you know that we've got another episode. So, yeah. All right. And on that note, I think I'm going to say bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye for now.